Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling uh, a really intense piece of source material.
We are. It's the science fiction novella The Dalek Factor by Simon Clarke.
And our mission for this deep dive is to take your excerpts from this story, really unpack this military mission that goes, well, horribly wrong.
Horribly and unexpectedly wrong.
Exactly. And while we're doing that, we'll dig into some, surprisingly deep themes hidden in there. Things like danger, identity.
And the nature of evil itself, seen through this particular lens.
It all starts seemingly straightforward, doesn't it? A squad of Thal Rangers reconnaissance mission.
Right, but it quickly goes off the rails. We're going to follow their journey through the text you provided, pull out the key insights. It's quite a ride.
Okay, let's dive in then. The setting. An unnamed planet, quadrill system. Supposedly uninhabited, right?
That's what the initial scans indicated, yeah. And these Rangers, they're from the Thal Ranger Division, highly trained, 2 years of it.
And they operate in platoons, rookies mixed with experienced mentors.
And they are really geared up for fighting Daleks. It's almost their whole purpose, it seems.
Your source even mentions this sort of grim idea of collecting Dalek trophies.
Or kids getting Dalek novelties on Freedom Day. It sets up this huge expectation, this almost mythic idea of the enemy.
Which makes the reality they find even more jarring.
Oh, absolutely, because what they actually find using their signature trace tech, it's not glorious battle.
No, it's decayed Dalek husks.
Yeah, the text calls them corroded lumps of crud.
Oof. Filled with, what was it? Wet, writhing worms.
And decomposed biological gunk pouring out. It's pure decay, not conquest, just rot.
It's such a visceral image. And the planet itself sounds awful. A silage lake.
The whole place stinks, apparently. And then there's this atmospheric static.
Right. It knocks out their comms, their telemetry,
Yeah.
all their advanced tech.
Pretty much useless. All that training, all that gear, sidelined by the environment itself.
But the Dalek signature trace, that still works.
Yeah.
Even in the decayed armor.
Yeah, down to the molecular level, the source says, which tells you something. Maybe about the tech they're using to detect it.
Or maybe something about the Daleks themselves, how persistent their presence is.
Could be. It's an interesting detail.
And the first actual threats they face aren't even Daleks.
No, first up are these leech-like things that get pelt. That's their first med emergency.
And then the walking hives, which sound terrifying.
Extremely. That moment where one mimics pup and then just dissolves into insects?
Yeah, that's deeply unsettling. How do you even fight that?
Exactly. So, right away, the enemy they expected is gone. Replaced by bad smells, failing tech, and these bizarre, shape-shifting biological horrors.
It completely undermines everything they prepared for.
Throws it all out the window.
So, okay, the mission's already gone sideways. They're dealing with leeches and walking hives, and then they find something else unexpected.
Right, the subterranean complex.
Which their probes completely missed. Suggests some heavy-duty shielding, doesn't it?
Definitely. And inside, it's different. Dry, protected, unlike the swampy surface. A pocket reality, almost.
And this is where they meet the professor.
Ah, yes, the professor. White-haired, eccentric. Memory loss is a big feature.
And that weird rhyming habit he has.
Yeah.
Like reconnoiter, goiter, loiter.
Yeah, it's involuntary, it seems. But he also kind of knows his way around the place or seems familiar with it.
He's a total puzzle at first, based on the text. Prisoner, madman, guide.
You just don't know. And the source leaves it really ambiguous initially.
Which forces the Rangers, and you as the reader, to try and figure him out.
How do you assess someone like that, especially when you're already completely thrown off balance by everything else? It's tough.
And then things get even worse.
Yeah.
Dramatically worse.
The environment itself turns actively hostile.
A kitchen wall just vanishes, reveals a jungle.
Just like that. And then, bam, this opaque barrier slams down.
Sealing Jomi, Kai, and Tarrant inside. With the professor.
And this barrier isn't just a wall. The source makes it clear it's destructive. It ablates flesh and bone.
Horrifically. We see it immediately with Goldstar and Amitan.
Crushed by it. It's brutal. Shows just how lethal this complex is.
And it leads to that moment your source mentions. Tarrant having to shoot at Amitan.
The merciful act. The coup de grace. To end that horrific suffering caused by the barrier.
And that idea, that term. It's important. It comes back later, significantly.
Definitely. So now they're trapped. Comms are out, comrades are dead outside, and they're stuck in this shifting death trap with this enigma, the professor.
And the death toll just keeps rising inside the complex. and in really strange ways.
It's not just firefights. Karen gets killed by venomous plants after the floor dissolves.
Blood-sucking thorn plants, no less.
Dasari gets taken out by a supposedly dead Dalek in that jungle area. It just reactivates.
And Flaby falls into a pit in her cell.
Yeah, it seems like the danger is woven into the very structure, the biology, even the deactivated tech of the place. It's relentless and unpredictable.
Meanwhile, the professor, he's starting to change. His memory's flickering back.
Right. He starts recognizing things, like the walking hives, compares them to Proteus from mythology.
And he knows things. Earth references, Thal history, their wars with the Daleks. How?
Good question. But the walking hives, they're a major piece of this. The source stresses their perfect mimicry.
And they can pull memories telepathically to make the disguise better.
Exactly. And underneath that disguise, the biological reality is horrifying. Laying eggs in people, using them as baby food.
Ugh, it's this awful mix of sophisticated deception and, like, primal body horror.
It really is. And this leads towards a central, really chilling idea in your source material.
That the Daleks aren't just conquerors, they're something else.
Kai calls them death, like a virus. But the professor starts to theorize. This place, it's not just a prison or a lab.
It's for Dalek-hearted creatures. What does that even mean?
It means beings, maybe originally something else, who've been re-engineered by the Daleks, infused with the Dalek mind, the Dalek essence, even if their bodies are different.
So those creatures in the cells.
Yeah.
Mutated, twisted.
The text describes them as perfect in the Daleks' eyes. Not physically, but because their hearts were made in their own image.
That flips Jomi's idea of them being rejects completely on its head.
Totally. They're successful experiments in a terrifying way. They embody Dalekness in a new form.
Okay, wow. And right around this point of realization,
The professor finds a key.
and his memory comes flooding back. And he says his name isn't Professor.
It's Doctor.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. His real identity surfaces, and with it, a much deeper understanding of what this place actually is.
And with that understanding, he figures out how some things work, like the automatic doors responding to body language,
Which allows them to try and rescue the others, Captain Vey, Kai, Pup, Rain.
who, as the source details, have been going through their own specific torments in their cells.
Yeah, Kai being flooded, Pup fighting insects, Rain attacked by hives, Vey fighting that ape thing.
Horrible stuff. The text presents it as torture, but given the context, maybe they're also tests. Dalek experiments in stress and survival.
Could be. Then the mimic shows up again, the white-haired figure that looked like the Doctor.
Right, the walking hive. And it leads them somewhere,
But not to safety. It leads them to a wall that dissolves.
revealing this enormous chamber, filled with Daleks, hundreds of them, and the Emperor Dalek.
This confirms the hive had its own motives, separate from the Doctor.
Absolutely. And the Emperor, its size, the tubes connecting it, draining power.
From the city and from the Doctor's blue box thing.
The TARDIS, yeah, this ancient, powerful vessel the Daleks are trying to exploit.
So, okay. Surrounded.
Yeah.
Hundreds of Daleks. Emperor Dalek. Looks like the end.
But the Doctor stops Jomi from shooting. He turns the conflict inward.
This is that key moment, isn't it? The psychological challenge.
Exactly. The Doctor talks about that other monster inside Jomi's head, his guilt.
About Yo the Pet, about not acting fast enough when Amitan was hit by the barrier.
And he explicitly links this internal struggle back to that idea of the coup de grace, the stroke of mercy.
And then he drops the big truth bomb about this place.
Yeah.
Everything is Dalek-hearted.
The creatures in the cells, the walking hives, maybe all life here, infused with the Dalek essence.
But here's the twist your source highlights.
Yeah.
The walking hives, the free ones. They're the Daleks' most successful creations.
Because they are free, adaptable, uncontainable, which is everything the Daleks who crave total control, hate, and fear.
So the ones in the cells are actually the failures, the ones they could contain.
That seems to be the implication. Their greatest success is also their greatest nightmare.
Which leads to the Doctor's final, awful instruction to Jomi.
Surrounded by Daleks, he tells Jomi to perform a coup de grace on Captain Vey, Pup, and Rain.
Not out of cruelty, but
To save them from becoming like those things in the cells, eternally suffering, trapped in that Dalek-hearted state. It's framed as mercy within this specific, terrible context.
horrifying. And Jomi, he does it with one shot left before his very last one.
And the source says he feels a release, like he's conquered that internal monster, the guilt. By performing this act, the Doctor defined as necessary mercy.
Wow. Okay. So that brings us to the absolute final moments in the chamber in this excerpt. Jomi has one bullet left.
And the doctor asks him that question. What beats stronger in his chest, a Thal heart or a Dalek heart?
His choice is laid bare. Shoot the Emperor, shoot the Doctor, shoot Kai, shoot himself. The universe holds its breath, sort of.
But what's really strange is the Daleks, they just watch.
Yeah, why don't they just exterminate them?
The Emperor claims it's scientific curiosity, and then admits the Doctor is their only hope.
Hope for what?
Hope to witness their own destruction, by the walking hives, by their own creations that they fear. It's this bizarre, almost suicidal impulse in this twisted relationship with the Doctor.
They need him as a witness to their end.
It seems so, a truly alien mindset.
And then the monitors kick in, showing the Doctor's defiance, the Emperor's confession.
And Jomi and Kai share this look, this realization that they've become something quite different.
Not Thal, not Dalek-hearted. Something else, forged in this nightmare.
But then the excerpt jumps.
Right, back to that armchair scene from the start. The white-haired hive dissolves the other hive that was mimicking Jomi.
Leaving the real Doctor confused for a moment.
And then a new Thal platoon arrives, asking him who he is to verify his identity.
It throws everything into question, doesn't it?
Completely. Was the Doctor's memory shaky the whole time? Were the hives manipulating the entire encounter?
Is he trapped in some kind of loop? A simulation? We don't know.
And his final question in the text, who am I? It turns that whole theme of identity right back onto the Doctor himself.
Yeah, after exploring it through the Thals and the Dalek-hearted creatures, it lands squarely on him, leaving you wondering about his state, his reality.
It's a powerful ending to the excerpt.
Yeah.
It really encapsulates the whole journey. The mission failure, the intense horror, the dial philosophy.
And those deep questions about identity, mercy, evil. It's all packed in there.
So after this deep dive, what are the main takeaways from your source material here?
Well, I think one key insight is this portrayal of the Daleks, not just as destroyers, but as these twisted engineers of consciousness creating Dalek-hearted life.
And the idea that their greatest success, the walking hives, is also what they fear most because it's uncontrollable. That's a fascinating paradox.
Definitely. And on the personal level, you see that struggle against the internal monster, Jomi's guilt, being presented as just as critical as the external fight.
With that coup de grace becoming this incredibly complex act of, well, what the story frames as mercy in an impossible situation.
Exactly. This deep dive really lets us pull out those specific nuances and complex themes that Simon Clarke weaves into this pretty harrowing narrative.
It gives you a much deeper understanding than just reading a summary.
For sure.
And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? If the Daleks are death and their creations are Dalek-hearted, what does it mean for Jomi and Kai to be something quite different? Does that offer any hope?
Or resistance, or is it just difference?
Or maybe, given that very final scene, the biggest question isn't about fighting Daleks at all.
Maybe it's about understanding identity itself, especially the Doctor's. Who is he, really, in the face of all this? That ambiguity lingers.
Something to keep turning over in your mind long after the deep dive is done.
Yes.